everybody. So I'm inspired to share with you. I have just returned from a movie tour, sharing my movie throughout the States and Canada for the last 5 weeks. And I've just made it home. I'm here back at the ACIM Ranch at the Center for the Waking Mind in Hawaii. And I'm relaxing and reflecting on my tour. So in this video, I'd just like to share some thoughts that have come to mind with regards to my travels and share a little bit about the interest that I encountered. People had curious questions about the movie, about my personal experience, and so I'll share that with you. But first, let me start with what comes to mind and what I walk away with from this tour. And the biggest thing that I walk away with is the incredible amount of generosity that I encountered. I encountered nothing but holy encounters as I traveled for the 5 somewhat weeks. It was a process for which I threw myself to the wind when I said I was going to travel with this movie. I basically said, if there was anybody out there who wants to see the movie, screen the movie, and or host me, let me know. And people did let me know. I traveled with my mighty companion, Ricky Kumo, who was a support while on the trip. And so we were taken in by many, many people, and I got to see how this shared purpose of peace really brings people together and brings out the awareness and the sensation or the feeling that we've known each other forever. And I think a lot of course students have this experience when they meet other course students. It's like a couple of emails and you see them in person and all of a sudden it feels like you've known them forever. And in my case, that's how I felt when I went to visit or when I stayed at people's homes. I felt like I knew them forever. So people are generous and people really want to extend. This was a very healing or an opportunity to heal when I visited people or when I stayed in homes. There was definitely a sharing and an extending of the teachings of truth, Course in Miracles. So it provided both the hosts and myself an opportunity to look at what's in the mind and heal the mind. You know, just traveling itself is a wonderful opportunity to mind watch and use surprises and situations as a treadmill or an exercising opportunity. You know, I have a history of traveling in really nice hotels for many years. And so this was the first time I was kind of like, you know, just waiting to see what would show up. And I slept in basements and on sofas and dens and really nice bedrooms and nice houses. It really was all over the board. The spectrum was wide. But what it allowed me to do is to recognize that no matter what the form looked like, what was unalterable, which is my identity as spirit, my identity as the whole, no matter what the form looked like, identity was unalterable. So peace was still peace and available and accessible as much as it has always been. So it was an opportunity for me to watch and to see how open the mind can be to whatever is happening. The other thing was, because there was a recognition that someone's couch or sofa or basement was really coming from love, it can only be received in that way. It can only be experienced in that way of love. So that was quite beautiful. There were a lot of surprises. In fact, there was a moment in particular that sticks out where I couldn't get on the plane. I was all set to go from LA to Canada to Edmonton, where we were about to show the movie. And I got to the airport, and as I was checking in, they asked for my passport, and I didn't have my passport. In fact, my passport had been left behind here in Hawaii. And I was told I couldn't board the plane. Excuse me, my nose is a little stuffy. And so they didn't let me board the plane. And so here I was at the airport hearing that news, but also recognizing what's true, which is the unalterable, still has not been altered. So regardless of what was happening in form, the unalterable was still unalterable. And there's complete trust that no matter what was unfolding, it was part of the plan, because I'm not separate from the whole. And so if there's movement, then I'm part of that movement, even if the movement is not what I want it to be. And it is a beautiful recognition to recognize. It's a beautiful recognition to recognize. It's a beautiful thing when we recognize that everything is happening in perfect order, even if our interpretation goes against it. Course in Miracles says all things work for good, and they do. And when we are sure-footed in what is unalterable, that becomes evident. It becomes evident to us that everything's perfect. And I ended up staying in Los Angeles and resting while my mighty companion Ricky Kumo went to Canada to screen the movie, and she had her own experiences of mind watching and mind training and so forth that came up for her. And I eventually caught up with her in Cincinnati, and we continued our tour on the East Coast. Meeting people, I also recognized there's a lot of interest in the movie, and so people had a lot of questions. As I traveled, I also recognized in my mind how, I showed this movie to different groups, the groups of 2 or 3, to crowds of up to 40 people. And it's interesting to watch the mind that likes to make differences in terms of the size of the group. Is it a better showing because there's more people, or not as good a showing if there's only 3 or 4 people? So I got to look at my mind and how it wants to say one's better than the other. The mind thinks, oh, with more people there's better conversation, or with more people there's more donations coming in. And that was shown to not be the case. There was certainly times when there was a smaller group and the donations were much more than some of the bigger groups, and certainly conversations were deeper and more engaging in some of the smaller groups. So everything was really twisted and shown to me to be twisted in the way I thought about it, and instead proven to be perfect, as everything is. And the one question that, well, there were a lot of questions that came up, but one question that sticks in my mind that was asked that I'll share. And it was a question that I asked every teacher that I met during the filming of the documentary, and it was this: how has your life changed since the application of Course principles? How is your life different? And so that question was posed to me, and the immediate answer that came to mind, or the feeling that was expressed, is I feel saved. I feel saved. For much of my life prior to this awakening experience, prior to this, most of my life I felt that there was something to get. I needed to save myself. I needed to sustain myself. I needed to manipulate circumstances. I needed to have things a certain way in order to be happy, in order to arrive at an imaginary place where I can then sit back and say, oh, I've arrived. And what I've learned is that that imaginary place is not attained or achieved through worldly pursuits. However, that imaginary place isn't an imaginary place. It is a reality when we recognize or come to know who we truly are. And the experience of I've arrived is a very present experience. It is a known experience, no longer imagined as a future achievement, but as a present reality. And from that standpoint, I feel, I am saved, and there's nothing left to do or to get. That doesn't mean that doing and getting doesn't still unfold. It does, but it doesn't come with a neediness or or the thought that I can actually get something that I don't already have, that I can achieve something that I don't already have. The getting and the unfolding that happens simply happens out of inspiration, and it happens or feels to happen in alignment with the movement of the universe. Feeling whole, recognizing myself as the whole, I also recognize that I never really make independent decisions. To follow spirit, which is whole, is to follow and flow with the universe. So there's a recognition, although that there's an appearance of still some getting and some doing, it's in reality just movement with the entire universe. I am not separate from the universe. So that means all decisions, all movements are all happening with the universe, which also means I am supported by the universe. And this is good news for all of us. We all move together, we all awaken together, and hand in hand, we enter the kingdom of heaven. So, how has my life changed? It has gone from an experience in which I thought I was separate to an experience of inspiration where I really feel like I'm being shown that there's nothing outside of me. And with that, I will say I love you. Until next time. Bye.